And we're live. This is, I guess, the CHW Studios channel talking about the Circle of Fifths. I'm Asher, and I'm normally not live streaming in the middle of the day. This is very strange. And that's Britt. And
What's up?
Britt and I haven't seen each other in person in, gosh, how
A
long?
while,
A month and a half, I guess.
probably. Yeah.
Um, we'll kind of recheck in about this in a second once I share this to my personal page, but we are talking about the Circle of Fifths today. And
Woo.
yeah, woo. No one has ever said that about Circle of Fifths, I don't think. But I did want to ask you, Britt, under what circumstances, sounds like I'm interrogating you, how did you learn the Circle of Fifths?
That's a good question. How did I learn the circle of fifths?
Right?
Um,
Because I don't remember learning it in one day.
I don't either. I don't remember. Like, I'm sure at some point somebody said like this is the circle of fifths.
Right.
I think for me it was more of like learning. Really, I guess learning like the order of sharps and flats, and then at some point somebody was like, "Hey, those go on a circle."
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, I don't know that I ever actually had like a sit down lesson though of like, here is the circle of fifths.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I'm interested to know how that went for other people because I learned it purely in an academic setting. It was all
sure.
here's theory 1 class, here's theory 2, 3, and then theory 4 was just 20th century music, so tone rows and very strange things that I enjoyed,
Yeah,
but it was like,
yeah,
hey, you learned all this stuff for 2 or 2.5 years, and now we're gonna break every rule that we haven't already
sure.
broken. So
Yeah. See, and I majored in accounting, so
that's
I,
different.
yeah, we didn't even touch on any of that. Um, but yeah, at the same time, like learning, like taking music lessons growing up, and then just a lot of self taught stuff. I mean, it's one of those things you kind of, for me, I guess, kind of stumbled across.
Yeah.
Um, Suddenly everybody was talking about it and referencing it, and it's like, oh, I guess I ought to learn what that is and how to use it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So
I think because I teach music lessons too, I've recently been sending this out to a lot of different students who are learning piano and guitar and stuff, and basically saying like, "Hey, just look at this, and then let's ask questions for the next
yeah,
lesson," which has been really cool because they've asked some really good questions that I did not ask as I was learning it. Um, Especially because I don't know it on guitar nearly as well as I know on piano. Um,
sure.
so it's been cool, and I think introducing it in any other method, I guess, can be really dangerous to someone who's like 10 years old because that can really quickly turn somebody off to music if you have to spend more than five
Yeah,
minutes talking about this thing.
yeah. Because that's the thing. Like the circle of fifths is it's one of those things. Like it's a really great tool, and it is a great way to visualize it all. But yeah, in terms of like, do you have to know the circle of fifths to play? Definitely you don't.
Right.
Like I would even say like, does it make you a better player if you know the circle of fifths?
It's a good
No,
question.
probably not.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
maybe a little bit, but it's really it's a lot more for understanding music, and especially for writing music. Um, but definitely, I mean, it can be helpful, like knowing key signatures,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Um, and it definitely, I think it explains a lot of stuff. It makes it a lot easier, but it's like I said, I don't think it's necessarily one of those things you have to for sure when you're starting off. If you don't know what the circle of fifths is, or you don't know what to do with it,
Yeah.
that is okay. You are not behind.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Also, for anyone who's joined, we are here to answer questions about this subject because just a little background, Britt and I have known each other for really just a few years at this point and played in
Yeah.
church together and pretty quickly realized that we like to nerd out about music theory and things like that. Um, but for the general person and even the average musician, I guess, well, I'm not going to put people in that category, whatever, but most people don't like to nerd out about music theory. So if you do have questions about these things, we would love to hear them and maybe help you make sense of them, because they're kind of wild concepts until you really understand like what all the numbers and things mean and sharps and flats, and then it's like, oh, okay,
Sure.
that's really helpful. But getting to that point, like I don't know anyone who had a really good experience of like, I didn't know circle of fifths and key signatures, and then I did, and the whole process was great.
Right. Right. Especially like trying to learn key signatures. I think that's a really intimidating one for a lot of people. Like I know when I was first starting off learning piano, and I had a fantastic piano teacher. But I was a young kid. And I don't know how long it was before I learned that like if a key signature has two sharps, that's the key of D, you know?
Right, right.
Like I just figured if it had two sharps, okay, I need to figure out what those sharps are and what key is. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
You know, like I just know that it's got two sharps and I don't know what they were going to be. And so for sure, like learning that all of that stuff happens in a certain way. There's an order of sharps,
Yeah.
how these keys are related, all of that kind of stuff. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah, if anybody has questions, that would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I posted a couple comments in there. How has circle of fifths been helpful for you as a musician, and is it even helpful at all? Debatable.
Ooh. Shots fired.
Yeah, for sure. And also part of the story behind why I even wanted to bring this up and do a live video about it is because one of my piano students has not even been learning for a year now. He already knows how to play all of Song of Storms from The Legend of Zelda.
Nice.
With both hands proficiently.
Okay. Okay.
And he's currently learning Hedwig's theme from the Harry Potter movies, which is technically in E minor, E harmonic minor, but then uses every single note of the chromatic scale within its composition. So I was like, I can tell you a lot about this song, but I should tell you two things and then just see where it goes from there and see what questions you have. So that's a really cool one to check out, by the way, if you can find some sheet music for it.
Sure.
Craziness. So as far as I did latch on to something you said though about like it can be helpful with composition. I think the main reason it's helpful is just knowing like if you're playing in the key of D, here are the two notes that are sharp. They're not going to be the It's not just going to be F and C. Those are going to be a half step higher, really practical things like that. So has that been helpful for you as a bass player?
What do you mean knowing?
Just knowing
like key signatures and stuff?
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
like
for sure.
Has it really? Okay.
Yeah. Because I think especially sorry, I clicked something. Okay, there we go. Especially like when you start off on bass or guitar, because it's conceptually it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of learn like the position and you learn like what the scale is and where to put your fingers and all that, and that's really useful as long as you know where to start from and you stay there. But definitely later on, knowing what notes are in the key is really helpful, especially if you're going to move around on the neck and you're not necessarily going to move linearly, So like if I'm going to start way down on the neck and then I'm going to jump way high, so I'm not going to necessarily walk my way all the way up there. It's definitely helpful to know, like if I'm in the key of D, that I'm going to play F sharps, I'm going to play C sharps. If you miss either of those notes, it's going to stick out really, really bad.
Right.
Especially if you miss the F sharp. If you play an F natural, you're now kind of implying a D minor sound instead of D major. So it's I think definitely knowing that, not to mention it gives you a lot more confidence, I think, just in knowing what you're playing, that if somebody calls it out that, hey, it was in D and we're going to shift it to E, knowing what the sharps are in the key of E, it just gives you the confidence to be able to do it, I think, a little bit better than necessarily like, oh, okay, I just move up 2 frets. Especially if you get into a situation on a guitar where you have to, like say you were playing in A, and you want to key it down to A flat, well, if you were playing open string A's, you can't play an open string A flat.
Right.
And so, yeah, you're shifting everything down one fret, but you're technically going down one string and up 4 frets. So I think for sure
Awful.
knowing that kind of stuff, yeah, I think for sure knowing that kind of stuff can be, like I said, I think it's more of a like confidence booster than anything, but
Yeah.
for sure understanding how it works.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm trying to argue this point now, but I am, just for the fun of
Okay,
it. So
excellent.
so like last year I played a Blink 182 versus Weezer show, and we were
Yes.
trying to get a girl that we know named Hannah
Uh-huh.
to sing a
Okay, yeah.
song called Island in the Sun, because we figured like this was it that one? No, it was another one. We talked
Islands
through
in the
that.
Stream.
Well, of course. No, we talked through that one and it was like, this is like way too low. It's not going to work. And
Sure.
then there was one by Blink 182 that everybody knows. What is it called? What's the Blink 182 song? I took her
I think
out.
there's a lot of
It was a Friday night.
First date. No,
No,
yeah,
the other
no,
one.
no.
This is the worst. I hate not being
This
able
is
to think of
embarrassing.
things. I know.
Yeah. We should have talked about this before we went live.
What's my age again?
Um,
I
there
know.
you go. What's my age again?
I
Yeah.
didn't know we were going to talk about this. Yeah, and thankfully, like, everyone knew how to transpose that song, but it wasn't because of knowing key signatures or circle of fifths. It was just like we knew that if we tuned it down or tuned it up to a certain point, we couldn't use those open strings. So I guess what I'm
Sure.
arguing is the circle of fifths is practically useless for a performing musician.
Okay. I would argue that you can always brute force your way around it.
There you go. I like that.
But the circle of fifths, while it's not going to necessarily unlock anything,
Yeah.
because it's not. I mean, it's just the circle of fifths is a great visualization
Right.
of how these things are related, but it's not going to show you secrets that you can't figure out another way. So instead of it necessarily like, yeah, using just being able to transpose something through brute force, knowing that, hey, everything has to go up this far, you could definitely do that. But I think the circle of fifths gives you a faster tool to get there. At the same time, I have never on a gig ever had, like a band leader call out a key and me be like, hold on, whip out my circle of fifths. Like that's never happened either. So, yeah, I think there's an argument to be made that if you're doing something live, like for sure, I don't know how often you're going to bust out your circle of fifths and
yeah.
give it a go. But at the same time, yeah, I would argue that you can use it as a shortcut in a lot of ways, even as a live performing musician.
Yeah.
And it's really, especially if you're a live musician, like most things, it's more something to memorize than it is to, look at.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I guess you can look at it to memorize it, but
Absolutely. This looks like a helpful comment from someone named Aaron Porter. Seems like a lovely gentleman. I can
Yeah.
brute force my
He
way
sounds okay.
through the ground with my fists, Asher, but a shovel would work. Oh, this actually is really helpful. He said, and the circle of fifths is even better about digging holes. Besides, shovels cost money, so don't buy a shovel. I don't know. I mean, we could probably just shut it down there. We'll repost that, make a meme out of it, and that's all you need to know about circle of fifths.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
If you need to dig a hole, if you want to go down a hole, the
Yeah.
circle of fifths will help you get there. Yeah,
But don't use your fists because that's really bad technique.
it is.
Though it would work, it would take a very long time. There's just a faster way. You can accelerate your progress, to use the parlance
right.
of our times.
That's right.
I will say for a drummer, like from age 14 to 18, I was just learning from a teacher at a place called Lunsford's in Knoxville, Tennessee. And we didn't talk like music. We talked drums and how are the drums working in this song, and how do you play snare drum pieces and things like that. And then in college, it was like, hey, you've got to learn all these things about pitches. And I was like, ooh, okay. Like I played a little bit of guitar, but I couldn't have told you that the first fret on the E string is an F note.
Sure.
Like I just didn't know anything about that. So, that's why I'm really interested to know like how people learn this and then how they're actually applying it. I guess
Yeah.
my question for Aaron then, using his fancy shovel, is how do you actually use the circle of fifths in real life? And we'll see if he says anything. And we'll just keep talking from there. But yeah, I think for a lot of drummers, I guess it's helpful because you start learning some chords and then you start hearing some chords and then you can tell other musicians what they're doing wrong.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that's probably like one of the biggest things about it all is like knowing the chords, knowing the diatonic chords of the key, the chords that belong in the key.
Yes.
And for sure the circle of fifths, it can help you with that, even if you don't know them. If you have the circle of fifths, neat trick, find the key center, right? Find your tonic, and then the chord to the left of it and the chord to the right of it. Those are the three major chords.
Mm-hmm.
The next three clockwise are the three minor chords, and the one past that is the diminished chord. And there you go. There's all your diatonic chords for the key.
Nice.
That's also all the notes in the key.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, I don't know that I ever learned a key that way.
Right.
But yeah, it's you could do that.
Yeah, that's true. I guess one of the morals of this story is that you can use it to learn E minor and then E harmonic minor. And then once you get to Hedwig's theme, none of that actually helps you because it doesn't really stick there very well. So
Excellent.
yeah.
Yes.
Also, Aaron said, "Oh, not at all. I'm too slow with it." I feel ya. He said, "This is why Nashville made his numbers, so we don't need to go in circles." I do just want to point out that Nashville is a real person. Like, that's not just a system that a group of musicians made up. A man named Nashville actually made the Nashville number system. So
Yeah, I have heard that.
you have heard that.
I've also heard it fairly well debated that the Nashville number system has absolutely nothing to do with Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody really knows why we started calling it the Nashville number system, as though Nashville had anything to do with it. But
who
else,
I mean, who else calls it Nashville number system? Like, is that a Knoxville thing?
I've heard other people refer to it as Nashville numbers, but honestly, most of the time when I hear people talk about it, they talk about the number system, or you might have heard it called the Nashville numbers.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know that that many people that I've ever heard talk about it actually refer to it as like, well, I don't know, one or the other. Usually they just start calling out numbers.
True.
It's just kind of assumed that you're going to know what that means.
Right.
But that's a really good one. If somebody starts calling out numbers, you do have to know what that means.
Yeah.
And again, while I'm not going to bust out my circle of fifths in the middle of a show, it's one of those things. It's a good thing just to understand how it all works together. It kind of takes some of the mystery out of the music. Because music it's not something mysterious, it's not something magical. It's actually something very mathematical and very predictable. Especially when you're talking about this kind of stuff,
True.
and
yeah.
Which I think that's another thing that a lot of people kind of misinterpret about like all of music theory. Really, they feel like they think that it's a set of rules that tells you what you can't do. And to me, it's more like a set of kind of if you do this, then this will happen.
Right.
It's more there to help you figure out much faster what's going to work for you, so you can avoid all of the things that aren't going to work for you.
That's true. And then to take it a step further, it's like, what can you, or what would you normally do, and then what can you do to make it a little bit different, or a little bit darker, a little bit lighter or brighter.
Yeah.
Dave Hawley just said this is left brain stuff. Ha. I miss you, Dave. I really do.
Dave, ask a question.
Yeah, Dave, what are your music questions? Also,
what are
I will
your
say,
thoughts?
I think that's a fine line too, because I think for me, going to school and learning all of this stuff, it took some of the mystery away But then when I would hear things that still like made me emotional or really blew me away, it was like, okay, it definitely didn't take all of the magic from it, you know?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
anything, it helped me understand things better, which is good for my brain, because if I hear something that makes me really emotional, if I can explain at least a little bit of it, then I don't know. I'm not dealing with psychosis quite as hard at that point.
Yeah. Well, and it gives you a way to talk about it and actually name some of the stuff you're hearing.
Right,
Like
right.
to me, a really emotional chord is a double suspended chord. It's like the sus4 sus9. That sound um, is a really just like rich emotion chord.
Yeah.
Um, but if I were to say, hey, play a really rich emotion chord right there, then that's up to you to interpret what I just meant.
Yeah.
But if I
Yeah.
say, hey, play a double suspension, or that's the sound, like then we all know what I'm talking about, or at least if you know what that means, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But you're using the actual terms for things instead of just these random ways to describe it. Because especially music, we use a lot of really odd descriptions of things.
Sure.
Like we talk about sounds being warm or cold,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which obviously none of the sounds are warm or cold.
Right.
Um, but as a musician, you know what I'm talking about there. So I definitely think that some of this stuff too is just it's a great way more than anything to learn what all of these actually are, so
Yeah.
you can talk to other musicians.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think compositionally too, if you know what's going to make a warm sound and you want a warm sound, it kind of cuts your time down. Like you have to do less
Oh
searching
yeah,
for that kind of thing. And I think, like, I've heard a lot of people, like Tom York of Radiohead has famously said, like, he doesn't know music theory. He thinks that it takes the magic out of writing music and out of music in
sure.
general. But I think from a compositional standpoint, it can give you like four different options for what kind of warmth you want
Yeah,
and like what you want the listener to really experience. So on that note, I think it's a really good thing. So but really, like anything you systematize, it's like some people are gonna love it, some people are gonna
yeah,
hate it, and at the end of the day, with music, I think it's cool that the rules have all been broken a million
sure.
times over. So it's kind of cool for me to be telling a student like these are rules, hold them very
Yeah,
loosely, because I mean, again, Harry Potter, we're gonna break all the rules within the
yeah,
first 30 seconds of this song.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like, especially, like using back to the circle of fifths, right? One of the coolest things about it, it can show you based on what key you're in, how the rest of the keys all relate to it.
Yeah.
So if I'm in the key of C and I want to make a key change, right? I think most people immediately think, oh, like changing from C to D. Um, and you can do that. You can just key everything up
True.
right in the middle of the song. There are tons of songs that do that.
Right.
But if you want a smoother key change, like if you want to take it brighter and you want to do a nice smooth transition, well, the circle of fifths would show you that if you go one to the right, you get to G.
Yeah.
So G is brighter compared to C. You're going to key it up, but you're not necessarily going to do what they call the truck driver key change, where you just suddenly shift gears into a new key.
Right.
You can work your way to it, and all of a sudden you're in G, and it's like nobody ever knew you changed keys. And then from there you can keep on going. Obviously that's a huge thing in jazz.
Mm-hmm.
To just walk the fifths,
Big time.
and you can go all the way around the circle.
Yeah.
And just keep going. In fact,
Was it giant steps
yeah,
that
giant
moves
steps and
around?
all of
Yeah.
its changes. But for that matter too, I mean, 2/5s are a big thing in jazz, where you go from the 2 chord to the 5, and you can just keep on rolling that around over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And you could do that if you wanted to key change halfway around the circle, which is really as far as you can go, because otherwise you would have gone the other way.
Sure.
But you can 2/5 your way all the way there if you want to.
It's a real black hole of music right there.
Yeah, yeah. But I think that's a huge thing too, of just seeing how all of that stuff, kind of works together, seeing how all those keys are related.
Yeah. And that's basically why I had to learn this stuff in college, because I studied jazz, and learning all the 2/5s. It was kind of like, in my brain, it made more sense to say this is a 2/5 of this key. The next two
Yeah.
five is not the 6 to the 3 chord. This
Right.
is this is a brand new key, because that's what it
Right.
sounds like to me. And on
Yeah.
that note, Aaron Porter has said, talk about
Yeah.
how and why modern church music, and others to a lesser extent, seems to revolve around the 4 as the key center almost, if that makes sense. That is a hot take, and I don't know if I fully agree with it, but I like it.
What would you disagree with?
I would still hear the 1 of really any song still as the key center.
Yes.
Uh,
I would agree with that, but I think
I
what he's
I think I
saying,
understand what you're saying, though. Yeah.
yeah, is how many of them emphasize the 4 so much, um, and almost avoid the 1. So like
Yes.
almost like they're trying to hide what the key center actually is.
Gosh, that's a
Um,
good point.
yeah, because there are a ton of worship songs that start on the 4 and end on the 4 and really hang out around the 4.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're not going, because like the classic, to dive deeper probably than we mean to go right now, the
I love it.
classic, the classic 4 chord sound would be that Lydian scale, and
Yeah,
they're not ever going for a Lydian sound.
that's true.
Um, they're definitely in a major key. They're just hanging out all day long with the 4,
Right.
or the subdominant, uh, or
To use all the
predominant,
words. Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, I think that's a really good question. Yeah, what's your thought?
I think, okay, we could go really deep into how I think that's a metaphor for God, and how you can't really
Man,
describe or find or explain away
all right, I wasn't prepared
the
for that one, but
the infinite force of the universe, however you choose
okay.
to interpret that. That's one take on it. The other take would be, because of all the music I've analyzed, jazz and classical and otherwise, I still always hear the 1 like in the back of my head.
Sure.
So I think for a lot of musicians, that 4, I'm not saying this is what is happening to Aaron, but that 4 becomes like the main focus, therefore a key center. Like I see
Hmm.
how you could make an argument for that. But
Hmm.
in my head, I'm still always hearing the 1 against the 6 chord or the 3 chord or the 4. And it's
Sure.
like there's always some place that we're supposed to be getting to, but music is more about the journey, and we could go down that hole too.
Okay. So then in that case, there's always some place we're supposed to be getting to,
Sure.
but how many of these songs don't ever get there? Um, like I said, I mean,
A lot of them
everything
these days.
kind of, yeah, everything is built around the 4 chord.
Yeah.
Um, which, using the functional harmony,
Mm-hmm.
the 4 chord is setting you up to go to a dominant. It's supposed to be taking you away from home so that the dominant chord can point you back home. Which I think that's a big part of it. I think a lot of it is that getting away from functional harmony. I think it's my honest opinion is I think people are looking for new sounds. I
Yeah.
think that the 1 chord tends to be just a little too stable for people, and they
Yeah.
equate that to like happy and bright and campy.
Yeah.
Um,
Campy for
but
sure.
yeah, and it can be, but I personally think this is kind of more of a result of the complete lack of compositional theoretical knowledge. Because
Yeah. In a good
tons
way.
of music, well, in a good way and a bad way. Because like the 5-to-1 resolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the perfect cadence, 5-to-1. I've heard a lot of people describe that as campy and bright.
Right.
Um, but if that was really the case, then think of all the music that has been written over the last, what, 300 years
At least. Yeah. It's a lot of
at
campy
least.
music.
Right. And the vast majority of that you would never describe as campy.
Yeah.
Um, even though it's riddled with perfect cadences, instead of the darker plagal cadence of the 4/1.
Yeah.
And so I do think there's some of that in there. I think people are trying to get away from that sound. I think the 4 sounds a little darker, a little more mysterious.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it's a result more of people trying to write songs using 4 chords because they don't know what else is available to them.
Sure.
And I also think that it's a result of trying to keep things simplistic, because a lot of worship music is written to be very accessible to any level of musician.
Yeah.
And so you are somewhat limited in your compositional ability there to do things outside of that.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I mean, like I was talking earlier, and I don't know of a worship song that would toss in a double suspended chord, but if you threw in a sus4 sus9 to most church musicians, they aren't going to have any clue what to do with that.
Right.
You know, they're going to pull out
Scary.
like a chord finder app and learn how to play it if it's in there. And they're not really going to have any clue what they're actually playing. They're just going to know that this is where their fingers go.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So I think there's some of that too. Yeah, I would agree with Aaron saying that it can't sound too dark.
Yeah. Can't be too dark and scary in church.
Yeah, because you know, I would argue like if you want a more mysterious kind of darkness to it, a lot of that would come from, you know, like shifting other things, like shifting your melodies and stuff instead of always using a bright, happy major melody, using a, you know, Mixolydian or Dorian mode, you know, something to darken it up a little bit without necessarily going full on minor.
Yeah.
Because for sure, the vast majority of modern worship music, even if it is in a minor key, is scared to fully embrace that minor sound.
Yeah, I think also with the 1 chord, when it does occur, it's like an inverted chord, so it sounds more like a 3, sure, which has, you know, just naturally darker sound anyway. Like that's even thinking. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, you know, to me, anytime you're playing all of these as just, you know, standard triads, they're all gonna sound a little over bright.
Yeah. Right.
You know, and you're not going to get much richness to the sound. And I think that's the other reason that a lot of people hang out with the 4, is because the 4 to 5, if you're just moving in triads on the keyboard, there's not much movement there, so it doesn't sound too abrupt. But if you go from the 5 to the 1, it's like, you know, you got that whole just really over the top brightness there. But part of that is because I don't think people know how to properly voice chords.
Sure.
To take some of that edge off, because it can be like I get that it can be glaring, and not, you know, just a little too, yay, you know.
Yeah, a little too
we're
bright
here.
And happy.
Yeah,
it's not too much like the Psalms, I guess.
Yeah.
Or most
personally,
of them.
I like the 4-1 plagal resolution better anyway.
Yeah. I think at this point I do too. I was just thinking of like there's a Billie Eilish song that came out within the past few months that has the same chord progression as like a Hillsong Young and Free kind of thing, but with the way she's not just the way she's singing it, but the notes she's choosing to place on top of it for a melody. It's like it sounds so much darker.
Sure,
it's really cool, and I'm wondering if that's where a lot of worship music is going, just because worship music stays a few years behind pop and pop culture,
right?
You know, over the past 20 years. So
yeah,
I'd be up for that. I think it'd be cool.
Yeah. I also think some of this too comes from the way music is composed today. That most of it's being done through a DAW, you know, or on a computer,
right?
And just the natural workflow of it. You know, you want to do a little piece and then loop it and loop it and loop it and loop it.
Yeah.
And so if you do that and you limit yourself to 2, 3, 4 chords, whatever, you're not really ever going to develop a rich harmonic idea anyway. And so I definitely think there's some of that in there too, that because you're not necessarily playing the music by yourself, you know, actually with your hands on your instrument. You're not necessarily going to develop some of these thoughts into, you know, this is the same thing I was playing earlier, but I've subbed a chord or I've inverted something or whatever it is, you know.
Right.
So yeah. Those are my thoughts.
There you go. Circle of
Aaron,
Fifths.
I hope that answers
uh,
your question.
all the way to modern worship music.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like analyzing this stuff with the purpose of like how would I teach it to somebody else, and also just the angle of like how do the different things hit me. Like Dave was saying, this is very left brained. I think for
sure.
me, it's to the end of like how am I going to use this, or
Yeah,
how does it help me cope with hearing a song that makes me feel like tears forming? If I can explain it a little bit, I'm like, okay, that
yeah,
helps. It's not so
yeah,
like ethereal or esoteric or
yeah.
something. So, well, this was fun. This was fun at like
Yeah, it
4 o'clock in
was.
the
We kind of,
afternoon.
I think we got kind of off track there.
Sure.
Um,
I do see Gary Bernard and Joshua Howard joined. If you all are here, I would love for you all to give some input on how you think Circle of Fifths is helpful, or just a take on modern worship music, because that would be fun from either of them for sure.
or proper voicing of chords.
Oh,
Gary
yeah.
is a master of properly voicing chords so they don't sound campy.
Why don't we talk about church musician archetypes for a second? Because
Perfect.
Gary is the guy who is like, oh yeah, I don't know if I can do that, and then he blah 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 and like makes really cool voicings and just flows through a song
Yeah,
really well.
yeah, for
Like
sure.
makes it feel fresh, even if he is playing like the same things from the record, I guess.
Yeah,
Um, it's the
he's
kind of thing you
always
can't
humble,
teach.
always laid back.
Yeah, I hate him. I'm just kidding. I do miss playing some country music with him.
I know.
I was purposefully trying to avoid like any quarantine talk to sort of like, let's get away from that. But it really does
Sure.
suck not being able to play gigs right
Yeah,
now and play
yeah.
with other people.
It sucks not being able to play gigs. It also sucks seeing things that I've been booked for
Just not
slowly get
happen.
either canceled or rescheduled. I was joking. Actually, I think I was texting Gary, yeah, about this, and was saying, on the bright side, I can officially say I'm booking dates in 2021 now. But
That sounds like really like you're doing some good work right there.
yeah, yeah, it sounds like I'm incredibly in demand. And I'm not. It's just that, yeah, the rest of the year has been canceled.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, but I don't know. Hopefully this stuff will be over soon, and people will be out and playing together again. Whether it's at churches or like local shows or festivals or whatever. I don't know how long it'll be before we get like big stuff
Yeah.
back,
Yeah.
but yeah, I would love to just anything like jam session
Right.
would be great right now.
I'm looking into a lot of the software and apps out there that actually let you jam with people remotely.
Yeah,
I don't know of anything that is really trustworthy to like put on a full remote show necessarily,
sure. Yeah,
but definitely want to try it coming up soon.
yeah.
What was I gonna say? Something about jazz. Jazz. Jazz.
Man, we were watching The Office the other night, my wife and I, and the I don't even remember what episode it is, but Angela is upset about something, and she and Dwight are talking, and he says something about like that's not stupid, jazz is stupid. And she's like, jazz is stupid. Just play the right notes.
Such a great line. I love it. The thing too is like I went to school with a few people who I think got like early as a freshman and sophomore in a jazz program. Almost everybody gets really into this mentality of like jazz is like the pinnacle of music. Like this is
Sure.
the best thing. It's better than anything else out there. And then by the time you're a fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth year senior, you're like, I'll play any other gig besides
Yeah.
jazz. Like I
Yeah.
appreciate it. I'm glad I learned it. I want to do something else and use this knowledge elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's not to say that I don't love listening to jazz, especially very old jazz,
Sure.
or even in the 50s when Coltrane was going crazy
Yeah.
with some of the stuff we talked about, 20
Yeah.
minutes ago. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
That's the
life of
sad thing though, is like
a
you
cat.
learn all of that and then you find out that like actually the real world, nobody's ever going to pay you for that.
No,
you know,
they're gonna
no
pay
one's going to
you.
pay you to play jazz.
They're gonna pay you less for that,
Yeah.
mostly.
That's like the joke about bass. You spend all those years learning all these things and all these techniques, and all anybody ever wants you to play is the root and
The
the
root.
fifth.
Can you please play the
Uh,
root? some
Yeah.
more.
And also we don't like please stop playing all those rhythms. You just need to play when the kick drum plays.
Hmm.
Yep. Been there.
Yep, exactly. Cool. Well, no further questions. Just
Somebody else ask a question.
some fun funsies from Aaron Porter. This was also kind of a test just to see like who's on at this hour of the day. Maybe we'll do it again next week with a different
Yeah.
topic, or later this week.
Or whenever.
Yeah, and try a different time. You know, everybody's got a lot going on right now, so
We might
so
even do
we'll
it
see.
later tonight. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. What
We'll
are y'all
see you
doing
guys in
at
a couple
What are
hours.
y'all doing at 10 o'clock? Um,
Yeah.
cool.
Also, if anybody has any thoughts about what we should talk about next time,
Yeah, let's do
right?
it.
Yeah. Any other topics? Something that maybe we'll stay a little better on topic.
That's true. Yeah, Circle of Fifths was like it's just been so on my mind trying to find the best way to teach it to a couple of my students. I wanted to see what your take was on it, and also like how you learned it,
Yeah.
which totally tracks with
Yeah.
how I think most people learn it. It's like I started out playing songs, and then I learned scales, and then I learned that you can put all this stuff together um, in some
Yeah.
way, and it's not helpful until then. You know, like
Yeah. That's kind of the thing. I don't know that like to circle back to the
end it,
beginning.
end it.
I honestly like yeah, I think the circle of fifths is a really useful tool for people, but
Right.
unfortunately, yeah, I don't know how useful it is until you kind of already learned a lot of the of what's already there.
Sure.
Um, so for me, more important than the circle of fifths, more than anything, would just be the order of sharps and flats, and then you can
Key
kind of take
signatures,
shortcuts
right?
from there. Yeah, like if you know the order of sharps and flats, and you know how many sharps there are, the key is a half step up from the last sharp.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you know the order of flats, it's the second to last flat.
Right.
You know, and then you don't even need the circle of fifths for key signatures. You've
That's
already got
true.
that. And really, if you've got that, then if you know the order of the diatonic chords or whatever, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, now you know all the chords.
Right. That's what I told a
So,
student last week too. Is like, hey, we're doing C major and A minor. Ask me any question you have. We won't spend too much time on this because it can get really really boring.
yeah,
But I'm just trying to teach them like what are those diatonic chords
yeah,
for those two scales,
yeah,
and then go into G major, E minor, and do key signatures, and then it's
yeah.
like hopefully he'll see at that point like, oh, you can just transfer this knowledge
That's
anywhere.
the thing. I think if you learn those two concepts, you're going to be a lot farther ahead than if you spend your time really trying to internalize the circle of fifths.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, because I think once you've learned those, you can look at the circle of fifths and say, "Oh, this makes sense," and you can kind of go from there and learn a lot of
Right.
other stuff. Um, so I mean, there is definitely use for it. You know, for instance, if you ever want to know what the notes of a pentatonic scale are, find the tonic of the major key and then count that one plus the next four, and there's your pentatonic scale. So that's kind of cool, I guess.
There you go. I've never even done it
You
that
know,
way. Makes sense.
I haven't either, but I realized last night you could. And so I was like, well, there's something you can do with it. It is a cool thing, but yeah, I think I would definitely spend my time more on understanding order of sharps, order of flats, and how chords work. And then from there, honestly, I would probably move on to something more like understanding modes
Yeah. Yeah.
for all of that, which is a completely different conversation for another time, probably.
Sure. Yeah. I
But
think.
also something I think is horribly taught,
Yeah.
in my
I would
opinion.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another reason I wanted to do this, is to try and figure out like what is a good way to teach this. But I think we're kind
Yeah.
of hitting on it now. Like if you start with songs, obviously that's going to be more fun. Explain it away
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to close this out, really the purpose here is that we want to have Adam Neely or Jacob Collier as a guest one day. So that's it.
Yeah.
That's what we're
Either
going
one of them.
for.
It doesn't matter which. Adam, Jacob,
Yep.
whichever one of you guys feels like it.
We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah. We might try to call up Rick Beato, see if
Sure.
Rick's available.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, this has been the CHW Studios channel thing. I guess it's a podcast and a YouTube, and I'm really struggling to figure out what to call it and really
A pod
encapsulate
tube.
both. PodTube. And signing off. Maybe we'll see you again soon.
Bye.